Hey, wonderful people. So I had the opportunity to speak at the ABBS 50th Annual Alumni Celebration. Just had an opportunity to share my story. I hope you like it. There's a lot of cool messages in there, so enjoy. Man, Natu, you're a character, man. I love you. Our history, our journey, our legacy, still we rise. That is the theme of tonight. Powerful yet simple, and we are all a representation. ABBS is a breadbasket of stories of adversity, stories of pressure, stories of resilience. But it's all about the journey. The journey. And my journey starts not with me, but my father in the rural hills of Taita, Kenya. He grew up in one of the poorest regions in the country, eventually being accepted into the only university at the time, the University of Nairobi. And after studying biochem and working for a few years, he found a mentor that encouraged him to apply to graduate school in America. And he was apprehensive. He applied to over a dozen schools and was promptly rejected from all of them. Nevertheless, he continued to apply, and months later, his manager was at a conference in the US, sharing a beer with some of his international colleagues, and one of them mentioned that they needed a research assistant. The catch was, my dad would have to leave within a month, and so he did. He dropped everything and left for the US, where he'd work and study virology for a few years before returning to Kenya, marrying my mom, then moving back to the US. Every time I think of this story, I am amazed. My dad got his first pair of shoes at 17 years old, and they were just sandals. He'd walk up and down the Taita hills onto the savannas with lions, barefoot. And he was the third of 12 siblings. My mom was the first of 9. You can imagine how many Alfreds there are. And together, they came to the US taking a leap for a better life for their children, a legacy. A legacy. And this is where my story begins. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. My sister Elizabeth, who is here with me today, was born in Gainesville, Florida. We continued to move from city to city, state to state. But after my parents' visa expired, we had to return to Kenya, and it was 2002. In Mombasa, Kenya, my sister Chow joined us. And now, my mom and now 2 sisters finally settled down. My dad kept on moving to support us. He's never lived with us since kindergarten. The 11 years living in Kenya had to be some of the most meaningful experiences in my life. I got to connect with relatives and grew up surrounded by Swahili and many cultures and languages. I established memories that would be impossible anywhere else. I've seen true poverty, people who have no hope, people who must scavenge for garbage and scrap copper because there's no other hope, no other option. These were my friends. The reason? Rampant corruption, lack of infrastructure, brain drain, 40% unemployment amongst new grads. Many issues many African countries must face. I remember class being canceled in 2007. I was at home watching the news, and my mom was locking the doors. She was storing food, and I was wondering what was going on. It was the 2007 post-election violence, where 1,500 people were killed and over 600,000 were displaced, and I could hear gunshots down the streets. But I've also seen that same nepotism, tribalism, and patriarchy be challenged. Most importantly, I've witnessed change as more women have entered parliament, potholed roads were filled, and a new generation of young Africans rise. All of these experiences, negative and positive, built my discipline, built my work ethic, and crucially, built my utmost gratitude to be where I am today to represent the hopes and dreams of so many. 2012 was a turning point in my life, though. Coming up in the 8th grade year of school, my parents were struggling to afford the high cost of my school fees and were taking out loans. They turned to loans and they depended on my scholarly achievement to fund me through school. At this point in time, my aunt and new uncle had just moved to Darrington, Washington, and invited me to continue the second half of my 8th grade year, where I would attend public school. Leaving my family behind, I made a journey of 9,000 miles. Nervous and fearful of a country so distant and different from Kenya, but nonetheless was my birthplace and new home. I remember thinking, as I sat in the plane, that I was finally fulfilling my childhood dream. I was finally coming back home, as my dad would always say. When I arrived in the North Cascade town of Darrington, I was the only African American kid at the school, the first many had ever talked to. And I remember they all thought I was coming from the hood. But no, I was just a timid boy from Africa. Darrington is a town of 1,000 people, 110 kids was the high school, and my graduating class was a whopping 27. Little did I know that my resilience was about to be tested because after only 7 months, my aunt and uncle, who I'd moved there with, decided to abruptly leave and return to Kenya. And so at 14 years old, there I was, without a home, not knowing anyone, and it was difficult. I went around to all my friends, begging for any of them to let me stay with them, at least for a while. My friend Gabe and his family, the Johnsons, agreed to take me in, and 4 years later, there I was graduating with Gabe by my side as a brother. The last 8 years would be impossible without them and their love. My sisters moved in with them thereafter. And now they're helping me co-sponsor my parents, who've been trying to, thank you. Who've been trying to return to the US for over 15 years. The good news is that in about 2 months or so, by graduation for sure, and after 2 years of me personally filling out forms and paying immigration fees, thousands of dollars, my parents will be moving here permanently. Darrington was where I built my confidence, where I learned to stand up for myself, and where I learned that the journey wasn't all about me, but importantly, the theme of tonight, the people. People are the ROI of life, and time is the investment. I'm only here because of Andrew Mauzano, who serendipitously, in 2016 on the steps of Red Square, I met. I'm only here because of mentors like Pam Laxon and Aaron Robertson. I'm only here because of ABBS leaders like Abel Zawalde, Idowu Jeremiah, and Helena Bantiwalu. These leaders and friends from all over the UDS community have been the bedrock to any success I've had here at UW. They have been there every single day, whether it was getting into Foster or whether it was battling depression after the end of my 5-year relationship. I've cried in Dharma Maurice's office. I've doubted myself. I've needed friends to lift me up, and they were there. Idowu and Helena are the reasons I pursued finance and became an ABBS officer. Alba was the reason I joined the Lavin Entrepreneurship Program, a 4-year program for aspiring entrepreneurs, where I followed in his footsteps, eventually becoming vice president and being one of the only black students in the program. I recently joined the professional sales program and have encouraged leadership to focus and lean in on our black community. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my story. 3 countries, 7 states and provinces, and 8 different cities and towns. I've brought all of this to Foster and so much more with me. But I know as I get ready to graduate this June and start work at PwC as a management consultant, that this is just one of many stories. This is why the history matters. This is why journeys matter. This is why legacy matters. And this is why ABBS and all of you matter. The ABBS Endowed Scholarship represents your hope and your belief. It represents not only me, but the yearning of so many other people, driven, passionate students here at Foster. My sister Elizabeth, I want her to have the same opportunities as me and more than I ever did. My youngest sister Chow, who just emigrated here and is living with the host family in Spokane, she now wants to come to UW as well. These stories are right in front of us, and we must empower them. A scholarship is much more than aid. It is a gift of will to be more impactful, to be more involved, to incite change and to be the change that we want to see. I'm happy to say that I'm going to be graduating debt-free because of the scholarship. I've been taking 4 classes every single quarter for the last 2 years. Why? To ensure that my actions match my ambition. That's the theme of tonight. The legacy I want to create is one unfolding right in front of us, one that we are all creating, one of opportunity, impact, and will. And as we create this legacy of opportunity, impact, and will, we must rise, and we must rise together. Thank you.
We say when